This offensive coordinator search has another twist and turn in it because there's news and reporting from Yahoo Sports that the Lions are set to interview Jake Peetz for that job. This isn't some quiet footnote in the coaching carousel, by the way. This is part of a turning point for a franchise that knows its offensive identity needs clarity and some creativity after a frustrating 2025 campaign. And so we're going to lay it out straight. The Lions fired offensive coordinator John Morton after just one season. He was in charge of a unit that looked great on paper with Goff, Monra, St. Brown, Gibbs, Laporta, and all the firepower that he had available. But it did not click, at least not in the way that the Lions wanted it to. To that end, around midseason, Dan Campbell took over play calling duties because the offense lacked consistency down the stretch. And so now that the OC is wide open, the Lions are casting a wide net. There was some reporting that they had already reached out to Mike McDaniel. David Blau was also circulating as a name. And then the Commanders just snatched him up because they were concerned that the Lions might hire him. I'm not really concerned about the Blau news. I don't think anybody really is. But maybe the Lions were a little more leaning that direction because the Commanders acted pretty quickly. And so maybe quietly Blau was the favorite. But obviously his name is off the table now that the Commanders have hired him. And I think there's a group of Lions fans out there that are hopeful Mike McDaniel gets picked up. I talked last week about how I don't know that Mike McDaniel is a great fit. He's obviously a brilliant offensive mind, but he's a quirky guy. I mean, he's a weird guy. Honestly, he's a coach that is, maybe you wouldn't really pick him as a coach, I guess, if that makes sense. I mean, some of his interviews, there was some reporting also this season that he had lost the locker room in Miami. I mean, obviously he got fired, right? He got fired for a reason. I just don't know that it's the right culture, right fit with him and the other coaches, specifically Campbell. In any event, we are on to Jake Peetz. The Lions have now requested an interview with Jake Peetz. Peetz is the Seattle Seahawks passing game coordinator. He's a guy who's now on the Lions interview list for this coveted job. And according to league sources, Peetz will be meeting with the Lions brass as they continue the search for their next offensive architect. And so why does Peetz's name matter? Well, first off, he's not just some random assistant. Peetz has been in the league for over a decade and has worked with some big names and big offenses. He spent 2 seasons with the LA Rams under Sean McVay. And so in my opinion, that alone puts him in the coaching tree worth respecting category. And he's been with the Seahawks since 2024. Obviously, he helped Seattle develop a top seed offense this year, particularly in the passing game. Even with rotating quarterbacks and a roster that wasn't exactly overflowing with superstar names. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks are a favorite at this point, shockingly, surprisingly. I don't think anybody in the offseason thought that they were going to be in this position, but here they are. And so Peetz has been a part of that. The other layer to this is that Peetz recently interviewed for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator job last year. So he's been on the radar as a play caller before for other teams. He's essentially been knocking on that coordinator door for a bit now. And I think the fact that Detroit giving him an opportunity tells you something. I think the fact that they're asking to interview him and meet with him and talk it over with him tells you that they're serious about exploring both established minds and rising ones. I think they're leaving no stone unturned. But at the end of the day, there's questions on this table too for Peetz. I mean, Peetz has not been an NFL play caller yet. Now, most of his experience has been as a passing game coordinator and assistant, meaning he's contributed to scheme and structure, but he hasn't fully called an NFL game from week 1 to week 18 like some coordinators do. And that's something the Lions will want to probe during this interview. Can he take total offensive control? Can he manage game scripts? Can he adjust mid-game? Can he integrate with Dan Campbell's aggressive vision with what Jared Goff needs to succeed? Our sampling from Seattle's season and their performance could be an indication that he could. But here's an interesting wrinkle, though. Detroit isn't the only team interested in offensive minds right now. I think Peetz's interview request shows that the Lions are thinking beyond the obvious choices, like DeBoll, like Blau, even though he's gone, like McDaniel. They're evaluating guys who understand modern NFL passing concepts and who have been part of staffs that move the ball efficiently. But we got to talk fit for a minute because there's a culture in Detroit. There's a real culture that's been established in Detroit. And if you're Detroit right now, you want a scheme that takes advantage of Amon-Ra St. Brown's elite route running, Goff's accuracy and experience, Gibbs' dual threat as a runner and receiver, Laporta's mismatch problems for linebackers. I mean, there's an offense in Detroit that can stretch the field vertically and horizontally. They can keep defenses guessing. They can grind it out on the ground if they got to, or they don't have to. I mean, the players are there on the offense. Peetz's background with Game Pass concepts, especially in Seattle, where they leaned into movement and option concepts and spacing, that could be a great match if Detroit wants to evolve into a more dynamic attack. But there's also the matter of experience, specifically the play calling experience that I just talked about. Now, Detroit has talent, yes, but you need someone who knows how to call it in real time, adjust to defensive shifts, and keep an offense in rhythm. That's why this interview is so pivotal. That's why this position is so pivotal for them. More than anything, it's the moment where Detroit's leadership decides what type of offensive identity they want moving forward. The high variance dynamic offense, or something more controlled and methodical. And one more thing that's really interesting with all this is the timing. Because Seattle is in the playoffs with the number 1 seed in the NFC. The Lions can interview Peetz anytime before the wildcard round is done. After that, though, they've got to wait until Seattle is eliminated before they can revisit him. Now that's unique because it means Detroit has to move fast if they want to get a jump on this and secure an interview before the window closes. And so what does that tell us? I think that tells us that the Lions aren't flailing. I think that tells us that they're not just throwing names at the wall. I think they're thoughtfully interviewing coordinators who could bring in new energy, new scheme concepts, and a fresh vision for the offense in 2026. And we know that they need that more now than ever after the way the 2025 season ended. Very disappointing. And so whether Peetz ends up being the guy or just part of a broader search, this interview is a key piece of what could be one of Detroit's most important hires in years. This offense needs stability, it needs identity, and someone who knows how to get the most out of Jared Goff and this talent-rich roster. And so this interview with Peetz matters, not just for him and his opportunity, but for the future of Lions football.